Hello there everyone, and welcome back to Void Dwarf Studios for the continuation of our Seraphon series. Now, bit of a different order this time, for I'm going to start from the top of the Seraphon pyramid and work my way down. And you'll see why in a minute, because the Seraphon operate in a very interesting manner. It's fair to say that the Seraphon, I suppose you could almost say, act like an anthill, with the queen, so to speak, being at the very top and the one that gives the instructions, and everyone else, well, follows the orders downwards. And the further down the pyramid you go, the less and less intellect is around, shall we say. It's not that the Seraphon are stupid, per se, or mindless automatons. To a certain extent, this is true, but the thing is, the further down the pyramid you go, the less individuality and personality you have, and the more obedient the Seraphon is to their Slann master, as this has always been this way since the beginning of the Warhammer Fantasy world. And so really, when we want to talk about the Seraphon, we have to start with their masters. And in this case, that is the Slann Star Masters. Created virtually in the very beginning of the Old Ones coming to the Warhammer Fantasy world, the Slann have been the instruments of the Old Ones' plan. The Great Plan, as it's known. And right now, the only thing the Slann were able to decipher from many confusing tablets and copied plaques and trinkets left behind by their creators, bearing in mind, of course, that these are plaques that they managed to salvage before the old Warhammer world blew up all around them, is that they are to defeat chaos. How is really up to them at this point in time, but the Slann are expertly created to actually be the perfect weapon. For you see, whilst Slann do feel emotions, they are so powerful and so controlled with both their minds and their magical capabilities that chaos just simply doesn't tempt them. Chaos has literally no real way of getting under the fat amphibious skin of a Slann. Their minds are too, well, alien, honestly. Too cold-blooded, too reptilian in their approach, too ordered and methodical and mechanical in a way. To the order of the universe, they are almost chaos's anathema. This, to me, suggests that the Old Ones knew chaos was going to come sooner or later, and required servants who would be up to the task. They simply cannot be corrupted by the powers of chaos. They can, of course, be hurt by them. If you throw chaotic fire their way, it's gonna hurt if the Slann doesn't do something about it. But Slann are so ridiculously powerful when it comes to magic that you're going to have to be packing some quite substantial firepower if you really want to expect to have any chance. And I'm not talking cannonballs here. These are creatures that can materialize entire armies with thought alone. That is the power and depth that these Slann are capable of. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The Slann are the amphibious servants of the Old Ones, and the leaders of their various temple cities, or temple ships, if you are the starborn variant of the Slann. They are exceedingly few in number because, as far as we know, Slann do not reproduce, and cannot reproduce. The Slann have been separated in terms of their age by generations. Now, the first generation were the Slann, which were around when the Old Ones were creating the Old World. They met the Old Ones. They worked directly with them. And in this particular case, there is only one firstborn Slann that actually exists anymore. And technically he's dead. That is Lord Croak. And we're talking a being that is potentially billions of years old at this point. The second generation Slann, those who remain, are exceedingly few in number, and are exceedingly powerful. You have then the third, fourth, and fifth generations, who, whilst not being quite as absurdly powerful as their first and second generation cousins, are still ridiculously dangerous, and by no means should you ever underestimate them. These are beings that have existed since the civilizations of the elves and dwarves ruled most of the Warhammer Fantasy world. So we're still talking about several thousands upon thousands of years old. These are creatures that can survive a hell of a lot of trouble in the world, particularly when they are safely ensconced within their temple ships or cities. Now, bearing in mind that due to the fact that these Slann do not reproduce, every single Slann who dies in battle is irreplaceable. That is part of the reason why the Slann have a reputation for being ponderous. Undeserved, but they are very, very, very careful and fully aware that they are a breed that will die out if any plan is enacted without the correct planning. And considering how rare Slann are, we're talking at most 100 individuals at the absolute most, and the figure is more likely to be 50 or less, considering that they left the old world in a bit of a panic after surviving the moon almost landing on top of them, and their temple cities being under siege by Skaven and the demons of chaos. Yeah, the Slann have to be extra careful. Demons can be recreated in infinite numbers. A Slann cannot. The Slann usually are very good at keeping in contact with one another and therefore are very coordinated in their efforts. It is true that Slann do have a personality of sorts, but because of how ordered they are, they never let any extremes tend to get the better of them. It's a very rare thing to anger a Slann. A Slann's mind is simply not suited to get angry very easily. It would have to be something pretty spectacular to actually make a Slann feel an emotion, beyond irritation. The Slann spend long periods of time in meditation and contemplation, trying to understand the great plan, trying to understand how to best enact it, trying to see how best chaos can be fought with what they have at their disposal. And this often means that the Slann sink into strange trance coma-like states where they're contemplating the enormity of their plans. And it's for this reason alone that the Slann have their skink priests and oracles around, so that when they come out of their trances, they can direct them as best as they can to, well, enact their wishes. This ponderous behaviour is not out of laziness. It is simply that the Slann spend such a long time thinking about things because they can see it from every single conceivable angle. And they plan and replan and check and double check and triple check that what they are thinking of doing is sound. And then they will share this plan with one another if they so choose. And they will check, and thousands upon thousands of scenarios will be used to play out the chances of success of whatever endeavour the Slann is under. Once a Slann has made a decision, I really, really, really hope that you're not the general that has to face a Slann, for whilst they are not necessarily military commanders, they will have thought through all of their chess moves 1 billion times before you even try to plot your battle plan. A Slann basically just has a mind that is capable of absorbing so much information from both the magical realm, the physical realm, and its telepathic links with its other kin? I was about to say brothers and sisters, but that's not true. Slann, as far as we're aware, have no reproductive capabilities whatsoever. I don't think anyone has been brave enough to try and lift the Slann to find out. Once the Slann decides to go to war, they will use their skink servants to enact their plans, to organise troops, to steer either the starship or rouse the temple city to war, and depending upon the severity of the threat, once the Saurus commanders have been assigned their roles, a Slann will simply sit back in its temple city, and telepathically command the skinks to enact its plans. A Slann, over absurd distances, can give commands to its skink priests with almost instantaneous connection. This level of communication means that whilst a Saurus army appears to be made up of reptilian savages, they are extremely well coordinated. And they will go with them if the need is dire enough and it requires their direct attention. And Slann, due to their size and, inability to move, they much prefer to go into battle on floating palanquins. These ancient pieces of old-world technology allow the Slann to easily float across the battlefield without having to set one grubby amphibious foot on the ground. Very convenient chair, although I really hope it has pillows. I can't even imagine the butt ache that must create. And when the Slann is drawn to battle, oh my. These are creatures that in the Warhammer Fantasy world were able to move mountains. You know that video I put up with the dwarves going back to their mountain homes and suddenly finding that they are infested with Skaven and orcs and goblins? Well, during that period of time as well, there was a hell of a lot of volcanic activity, and mountains were moving and being crushed against one another. Yeah, this was the Slann deciding to move the mountains a little bit in one direction because they felt the Old One's plan commanded they do it. These are creatures with magical capabilities that, with a flick of their hand, they can literally roast entire columns with arcane fire. They can call down lightning from the realm of heaven to strike anyone foolish enough to get in their way, and bring comets down upon anyone who manages the unfortunate success in irritating a Slann. They are absolutely devastatingly dangerous opponents to face, and you should not even attempt it without at least an army. Maybe 2 or 3, especially with the Slann that can just create armies from thin air. Well, you know, you're fighting something that's just absurd. Only in Age of Sigmar, where you have gods walking around, do you really have anything that could potentially fight this thing on an even keel. And even if you manage to get close to this thing, bearing in mind you will have had to fight your way through its temple guard, who are fanatically loyal defenders of their Slann mage priests, you've got to somehow get up to the palanquin, which will be hovering around in the air, and strike this fat thing without it somehow noticing you, which is not impossible, but obscenely difficult. Even a dead Slann is potentially really dangerous, because if their remains are able to be recovered from the battlefield, the skink priests will embalm the body, wrap it in bandages, and it will become what is known as a relic priest. These mummified Slann still give off an arcane energy source. The skink aren't entirely sure why. All they know is that these Slann are ridiculously powerful arcane batteries, and on occasion, in the past, relic priests have been known to move their palanquins around and start fighting the enemy. It appears even in death, the Slann spirit is so strong that it will remain attached to its body, refusing to go on to the next world, with the desire to complete the great plan being its most essential goal. And that is why even a dead Slann is a ridiculously dangerous proposition, so you better make absolutely damn sure that you kill this son of a bitch, because if you don't, it's gonna come back for you. It's gonna remember your ass, and it's gonna make sure that you suffer for it. Oh, and lest you forget, to even get close enough to this thing, the Slann could just quite happily just teleport away. It can just raise its palanquin higher. It can enact force fields. It can throw lightning at you. It can throw fire at you. It can throw practically anything it likes, because magic at this point is a Slann's bauble. It's such a basic thing for it to do that, really, it's really unfair, quite frankly. So if you're playing with the Seraphon and you bring a Slann, what are you doing with it? Well, basically, a Slann Mage Priest is going to sit in the middle or near the back of your army and shoot spells. Lots and lots and lots of spells. Surrounded, of course, by Temple Guard, or a suitably grizzled set of Saurus warriors, to make absolutely sure that nothing is stupid enough to try and kill it in close combat. Because, whilst this is difficult, a Slann is still a physically weak creature. It can barely support its own weight on its legs, let alone get off its palanquin. So, close combat is really your only forte, or a ridiculous amount of guns. That's really your only two options, and both of them aren't great. And that is why a Slann is really the heart and soul of your army. Slann will go on their own crusades trying to remove chaos from the world. And these are creatures that are old enough and have seen virtually everything that the universe has to offer to make damn sure that the Great One's plan comes to fruition. No matter how many bodies they have to pile up in order to achieve it, or how long they have to wait to get it done. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. Thank you all very much for watching and subscribing. 224 subscribers at last count. That's bananas. I love it. I'm so glad you're enjoying these episodes. If you think of anything you'd like me to do, please feel free to put a comment down below, and I will try and find somewhere in my schedule to bring it up onto the channel. I'll do my best. That's all I can promise. Anyway, thank you all very much for listening, and I hope to hear from you all soon. Until then, take care everyone.